I'm an artist, and this is creative institution, so we're going to be creative, all right? Is that okay? Yeah. All right. So I grew up in a Baptist church, right? And there's this call and response in the Baptist church, right? The preacher or the pastor gets up there, motivates and moves everybody and says, "Can I get an amen?" And then everybody says, "Amen, amen." That's right, okay? So that kind of transitioned to like hip hop, right? Hip hop music. And there was a group, I can't remember the name of the group. Oh, it was Tribe Called Quest. How many of you guys know about them? All right. And they had this song called Can I Kick It? And then everybody says, "Yes, you can." All right. So there's going to be certain points where I say, "Can I kick it?" Yes, you can. All right. So what I realized, thank you very much. I forgot the gentleman's name that came up. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation and really interesting. It was like the exact same presentation that I was going to present. But this is okay because I think that our wordings are a little bit different, and that speaks to, it wasn't planned, but that speaks to diversity, right? And diversity of thought. So just like in our organization, there are some students who connect with me a little bit more, other students who connect with another instructor, and that's totally fine, right? That doesn't mean that I'm inferior or they're superior. It's just the reality of certain people connect with certain things. So I'm going to give you some of the same information that you just got, but I'm going to present it a little bit differently. I'm not going to be a politician and tell you that I'm going to solve or we are going to solve diversity, equity, and inclusion in 10 minutes. It's not a reality, just like it's not a reality to balance the budget in 4 years, right? That's not true. It sounds good, it would be great, but it's not a reality. So, and this isn't really even skimming the surface, truthfully, right? I think this is where the seed is planted. And it's then upon you all as individuals to go out and water that seed. So with that being said, let's just start with my reality, that diversity, equity, and inclusion, this work is not easy. It's not easy work. And if it is easy for you, you're not doing it correctly, okay? It's difficult work to do. It's perpetual. It never ends. It's a journey. It's not a destination. I come from Rochester, New York. In New York, it's very diverse culturally, economically, religiously, very diverse, right? And I had the benefit of that, growing up in a place that was diverse. So I went to quinceañeras. I went to, I had Jamaican food and curry goat and so on and so forth. Can I kick it? Yes. All right. Making sure y'all with me still. Okay, so it was a beautiful thing. That being said, coming to Utah gave me another sense of diversity, right, that I hadn't been exposed to. So as diverse as my upbringing was, it wasn't complete, right? And it never will be completed. The reality is there's always, as the gentleman said, there's going to always be opportunities to expand your framework, your perspective when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I tend to look at the world in metaphors and analogies. That's kind of how I understand it, right? And when I think of diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is what came to mind. Like, we always talk about the table, right? Who's at the table? I'm going to go deeper into each of these, but let's just go. Diversity is seeing who's at the table and then acknowledging who's not, inviting the people who aren't at the table. The inclusion is adding seats to the table, right? Making sure that sometimes your board might say we only have 10 people at the table, or 10 people on our board, but you look around the board and it's not very diverse. So add some tables, or add some chairs to that table, right? Equity is getting out of your seat, right? So we have to realize that when it comes to empowering people, sometimes that means we have to give up our power, right? And that's a difficult thing when you're in a leadership position, you have a position of power. to actually give up your power, but that is the goal. The goal is to share power with other individuals. And when we are looking at diversity and looking at the table and considering who's there, considering who's not there, and then just inviting people because, oh, we need a brown person. Or, hey, we need a person who is transgender, right? Like that's going to be a part of our mission, being diverse, and so we're going to invite a transgender person. Then the brown person, the transgender person speaks up, right? And says something that's not necessarily the status quo. And then that person is shut down. You are no longer a diverse group. You're no longer an equitable group. You're no longer an inclusive group. The only way for those things to happen is if you do all of those things. You look at who's at the table, right? And then you say, okay, this person is at the table. We invite them to the table. Then we look at also who's at the table who's been here for 15 years, right? 20 years on the board. And life has changed, right? Culture has changed. Our environment has changed in those 15, 20 years. Who's at the table that needs to leave, right? And then we have to also look at like making more seats if that's a reality. But making sure that whoever is at the table at all times has equal voice and equal power. That is the only way for in my ideal world for it to be diverse, inclusive, and equitable. Now, this is the thing. You don't have to just check off one of those boxes, and then look around at your friends and give high fives like, oh yeah, we did that, right? There's still work to be done. You can be diverse and not equitable. You can be inclusive and not diverse, right? And this is the thing, the one thing that the gentleman said earlier that I think is very important, is diversity and equity and inclusion is not about just what is seen. You have to have diverse perspectives at the table, right? Now, this isn't always, once again, the easiest route to go, right? When you want your ship to go in a certain direction, and that's you have a mission statement, you have ideals, you have a vision, and then you have somebody saying, what about this over here? It's not like, like you want to move, I get it. But without having those diverse opinions and diverse thoughts at the table, all you have is a monolithic group, right? So you can be equitable, you could be you could be equitable and inclusive and not diverse if you don't have diverse thoughts in your group. So you can have sexual orientation represented, religion represented, gender represented in a diverse way. But if everybody in that group is liberal and middle class, it's not a diverse group, right? So just that is some thoughts. Sorry, I'm kind of going through this information quickly, but 10 minutes is the time, and I want to be respectful to the other speakers. Let me give you some examples, because I think that's important also. Because I could just be talking, right? I could have looked at some YouTube videos and taken some notes and regurgitated that. So let me just give you some examples of how our organization has implemented DEI. So Nurture the Creative Mind, our mission statement is to empower young people, help them develop a sense of self-value using creative exploration. One of the things, so we do a lot of things. We have programs, but we are also in events. We also recently got into research where we're trying to quantify the impact. Thank you. Can I kick it? Yeah. Okay. So we're trying to quantify the impact of, and this research is being done with, in conjunction with Weber State. We're quantifying the impact of creativity on anxiety, stress, and depression in youth. And then hoping to create what we're calling a creative toolkit for young people to manage and express themselves in a positive way, right? A healthy way. The reality is that depression, anxiety, and stress don't go away in your life. So let's give you some tools to manage those things, right? That's a reality, right? Unfortunately, right? That should be my political campaign stance. I will alleviate all stress and depression and anxiety. So it's not something that goes. So we've done a lot of things. That being said, in the event side, Recently, we did something last October. I think it was end of October, early November. We hosted a Dia de los Muertos event in Ogden. And it was the first year we've done it. It was a 3-hour event, and there was around 4,000 people who attended. Now, Ogden has a Latin and Hispanic population that's about 30%. It's a large population, right? However, that population has not necessarily been represented, acknowledged, and when they have been, it's been in a let's do this for them type of way. I'm not being derogatory. I'm not putting down anybody that's done anything in the past. The reality is that they had great intentions and they were doing things the manner that they thought were best to do them, right? Our organization came in with a different perspective. The perspective we had was we are going to get the individuals we would like to represent at the table first, right? Put them in positions of power, have them making decisions, and I, as the director, were just going to manage the festival. That's it, right? So when we came to questions like, well, is it okay if we have it on the first or the second? I went to the group who is a part of that culture to answer that question. When the question was asked, like, what kind of band should we have? I went to that group. Now, I didn't go to that group. I didn't build a committee that didn't represent that group, didn't look like that group, and then go to that group when we needed them. It's different. I had that group be a part of the planning, and immediately before, as I talked to each individual and asked them to be a part of the committee, I told them that there's going to be a succession plan, and after you all understand how to manage this event, how to establish partnerships, build sponsorships, I will step away and give the event to you, okay? Now, it still will be under our organization, but I will no longer be managing it. The beautiful thing about transferring power, right, empowering other people, is that it always turns out better. Mm-hmm. It always turns out better. If it's objective over ego, you will always be diverse. You will always be equitable. You will always be inclusive. Because the objective, right, to have a plentiful, well-attended, beautiful event is larger than me being the person in charge of it. So that's an example. Another example is recently our group, this isn't something we've been talking about openly through social media and whatnot. That being said, where the world is real, by the way, social media. Hello, the world is real? Oh my gosh. So basically I'll scratch that joke off 1 second. Take that one out. We have developed an ambassador group, and that ambassador group of young people are in leadership positions. We are mentoring them to be leaders. And as we were going through this process, I realized that this was in a silo, this activity and this progress that they were making as young leaders was in a silo. And then I thought, like, how can we take it out of the silo and expand it into the community? And so, I actually posed that question to the group, and then the group came back with questions like, well, how can we get involved at the city level? And I said, wow, let me look into that. And we don't have a youth council, right? An Ogden City Youth Council. So our group of ambassadors is developing a proposal to present to the city at city council about a youth city council. Now, this is the beautiful thing about this. It's not adults developing what a city council is going to look like, what they would be in charge of, what their duties and responsibilities are going to be. This is a group of young people being mentored by older people, right? Helping them with the proposal process. But nonetheless, it's their ideas, right? And so young people are deciding what young people will be doing and how they would be most effective in doing that responsibility. So this is how, like, these are just a couple of examples about how you can be, how we have been very intentional about our equity, diversity, and inclusion.